Welcome to the Bigfoot Society. In this episode, I talked to Drew from Ontario about his 2 horrifying encounters in Canada. Being chased on his mountain bike by 3 of them is just the beginning. If you have experienced something similar to what Drew has or have more information regarding Bigfoot or other cryptids in the same areas, please reach out immediately to me after this episode. Remember, your encounter could be the key to unlocking this mystery once and for all, so please don't hesitate to contact me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com. All right, Bigfoot Society, I've got the privilege of talking to Drew tonight. He's from Ottawa, and he's had some really interesting things happen over the years. How are we doing tonight, Drew?
I'm doing great.
Fantastic. That's all you got to do, right? Drew, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give it right over to you so you can share what you've experienced. And the floor is yours, my friend.
For those who are listening in Canada, I'm Drew. I grew up in a small town east of Ottawa. I've been in the forest my entire life. I know what everything sounds like. And back in 2013, I went to Blue Mountain, Ontario, and I was alone for 3 days. So I had nothing to do, so I thought it would be a good idea to go mountain biking on top of the mountain by myself, which I probably shouldn't have done. But when I went, I noticed the forest was quiet, and that bothered me. But I knew there was a predator around, and I'm about 2 or 4 miles from the lodge on top of the mountain, and it got really quiet. And then I heard like a freight train coming through the forest, and it was a 12-foot tall male Sasquatch. The smell was disgusting. I kept hearing whoops and monkey chatter. It really scared me. I've actually gotten diagnosed with PTSD because it was really traumatic for me, and I've been trying everything to stop it. But when I saw the squat, I knew exactly what it was. I knew it was male. I said out loud, "I see you, you see me, I'll go back." And then I went back where I came from. And then as I'm coming back, they made sure I was coming back because they were on 3 sides of me as I was biking, which was cool but terrifying. That was my first encounter. I was 13. I'm 23 now, and I'm ready to share the rest of my experience. It's a little bit odd, but I'm happy to share my story. If it helps any other Canadians, it'll make me happy. My other encounter happened in Huntsville, which is an hour outside of Algonquin National Park. I was exiting the hotel. I'm not going to say the name, but it rhymes with ear. And I was leaving the hotel at 12 at night to go to bed because I wasn't feeling well. And there's a male Sasquatch, another 12-foot tall one, steps out from the shadows, goes staring at me. I froze. I remember thinking, don't look in the eyes, don't look in the eyes. And I did. And I said the same thing I said to the one the year before. I see you, you see me, I'm going over there. As I walked by, it didn't do anything. It let me go to the hotel room because it was on its right side that I had to go to the hotel. And it followed me to the hotel because it was another 100 feet away, and ran around the other side of the building to make sure I was in the room, which freaked me out because the deck is 12 feet off the ground and the Sasquatch was 12 foot. I just saw its eyes staring at me from the bottom of the deck. Those are my two encounters.
Drew, this is very, very interesting stuff, for sure. Do you mind if I ask you a few questions about what you experienced? So, going back to the Blue Mountain, Ontario one, so you said you saw a 12-foot tall male. Did you notice any interesting physical features about the creature? Were you able to get a good look at it? So you remember anything about the face or the head, how it looks?
The head was like every typical Sasquatch that I've seen supposed photos of. And holy crap, the muscle mass was insane. He had a 6 foot wide chest. My arms are 13 inches. His had to be at least 36 or more. His arm was half the size of my leg. It smelled like a skunk and dog poop. I only smelled it for a minute, but I knew it was a Sasquatch just from the stench alone.
Were you able to get a pretty good look at the face of the Bigfoot at all?
Yes, it had the typical square face, no neck, and it looked angry, very angry. I think I was liking its territory.
What were the things you noticed that made you think that it was angry towards you from how it looked?
The breathing, it wasn't calm. I can feel things when I can feel a room change. And when it took that first breath, I stepped back because I could feel the anger and the hatred. Eyes were huge. He was the alpha. I wasn't. That's how I felt.
Do you remember any details about the eyes when you saw them?
They were dark black. It was a blackish brown. I can't exactly remember. I've had 6 concussions since this had happened.
Were you able to see?
But it was terrifying.
It definitely does sound terrifying. Were you able to see? Did it have an open mouth at all, or was it a closed mouth?
It had a tooth hanging out. It was smiling, like grinning at me, like a taunt.
Oh, so you're saying it had a tongue hanging out of its mouth?
Yeah.
That is
I don't know. I don't remember. I don't remember if it was facing me or it was hanging out because it was broken. I couldn't tell. It was too far away.
Sure. Gotcha.
It was 150 yards.
Gotcha. What would you say? Were you able to see the color of the hair or what parts of the Bigfoot were covered by hair?
Everything was covered except for the hands and feet. It was jet black.
And I know you said you were a ways away from it, but were you able to get a feel of how long the hair was at all?
A good 2 to 3 inches.
Okay.
At least.
Gotcha. Any interesting details about the arms that you were able to see?
I don't know. It wasn't flexing. It wasn't doing any of that. It wasn't trying to show off. It was just showing me that it was there. But I could see some veins popping from its hands, and they were big.
If you had to, let's say, categorize it, would you put it more in a human type category or maybe a certain type of ape category or maybe something completely different?
My theory is it's an ancestor to Gigantopithecus. I've done research on them and Sasquatch. They look alike, in my opinion.
Gotcha. Did it look like did it have similarities to any modern type of ape that we have still on Earth?
It looked like a little bit of King Kong, not gonna lie.
Okay.
That's actually what it actually looked like a lot.
Were you able to get a look at what its nose looked like?
No, I wasn't focused on the nose.
Yeah.
I was more focused on the eyes.
Gotcha. This actually reminds me of an interview I did last night. So you say you were looking at the eyes. Did you notice anything about the size of the pupils?
They were huge.
Okay.
I've never seen as big as pupils as I did with him.
How much of the rest, let's say, if you were to do a ratio of pupil to rest of the eye where it's the white part, what would you say?
90%.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, that's wild, man.
It was pissed.
Do you notice anything about the forehead since that area is close to the eyes?
It had a flat forehead.
Okay.
It looked like it got punched in or something. It didn't look right.
Really?
Yeah, it looked like it just got into a fight, honestly, because I was hearing a lot of ruckus while I was biking.
Oh, so there was like kind of a damage to the face, you're saying?
Yeah.
Oh, dear.
And before the Sasquatch showed himself, I forgot to mention this. It just popped in my mind right now. I heard a faint howl that sounded very canine, but very human. I think there was a dogman around, in my opinion, because the forest was dead silent. I heard that dogman and Sasquatch don't get along.
I've heard that as well. Did you do any research after this to see if there had been other sightings of either of those creatures in that area by other people?
I talked to Sasquatch University. I explained my story over Zoom, and they said there was 6 other sightings in Blue Mountain and Huntsville.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, dear.
But they said it was in 2014, so the year after my encounters happened.
And those are the guys that are from Trent University, right?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. They're also guys from up in Canada, right? In Ontario?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if anyone's going to know, it's going to be those guys for sure. Wow. That is wild. How did that make you feel when you heard that there had been 6 other reported sightings?
I wasn't surprised.
Mm.
If they're in the area, you're going to know. I grew up next to a small national park. I have a faint memory of me and my best friend being chased out of the forest by something because it was going to be dark. We swore to never talk about it, but I opened the floodgate.
And by that, you mean you did start talking about it?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
That's all I have of that memory.
Mm.
But we were terrified.
Thinking back to your childhood, your time growing up, was Sasquatch ever talked about in your household?
Oh, my parents are non-believers. They didn't even believe me when I told them I had a sighting, and I was shaking it when I told them. Now I think they're starting to understand that it really affected me, because I've been in and out of the hospital my entire life, and I would always tell the nurse if I'm over there overnight that I feel like I'm being chased.
Gotcha. Would you share your story in the hospital as well?
No. Yeah. There was other people in the room, and I didn't want to explain it. I was embarrassed by it.
I always feel that is such an unfortunate thing that happens in multiple different cultures where people, unfortunately, just don't allow a person to talk and don't take what they are saying at face value. And then that turns into people being afraid to share because of what they might get in return. You had talked about that you had heard some like monkey chatter in the Blue Mountain area when you had the sighting, right?
Yeah.
Can you explain a little bit what you mean by monkey chatter? Is there something that sounds similar, a certain type of monkey, or?
I basically heard the Ohio howls. Oh, I forget the other howls that are really famous.
Let's say if you were to go into a zoo, would it sound like anything that we would have in the zoo today?
Oh, God, no. It was too loud and guttural. They weren't, I sort of could understand what they were saying, but at the same time, I couldn't. it just sounded like two monkeys having an argument.
So what I'm going to take from that, and tell me if I'm off base, but is it like when you're hearing people in a different language talking, but you can get the inflection, you can get the emotion, but you just can't understand the actual words that are being said?
Yes, exactly.
So it sounds like you heard multiple creatures maybe talking to each other, or how many do you think were in there making noise?
I heard 6 different voices.
Wow.
Including, no, I heard 7 if you count that faint howl.
You got the 6
but
voices.
That wasn't monkey.
Yep. Of course. And then the other interesting thing you had said is they followed you back on 3 sides back to the lodge as you went back to the lodge. Can you describe a little bit more what it means to be followed on 3 sides?
Terrifying. I've never been. I don't get scared when I'm in the woods. I feel at home when I'm in the woods. When I tell you how terrified I was, I didn't sleep for 2 days.
Sure.
That's how terrified it is.
Were you having nightmares about what you saw? Probably as well.
No, I just have nightmares about just being surrounded. Like when you that interview you had with the guy from Small Town Monsters, I could hear his fear in his voice. That's the same fear I had.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, you totally get it, man. You get it, Drew. Yeah, I picked up on that as well. So when you're headed back to the lodge, you're biking back. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And so let's say you're biking through on the trail. I would guess you're headed towards the lodge. Does that mean that you had a Sasquatch like maybe on your right and your left and behind you then, if you had 3 that were following you?
Yeah. I could see one in the open, but I could see the other. I could hear the others in the trees.
You said you could hear them in the trees?
Yeah, they weren't being quiet.
Okay.
I know they wanted me out.
So you think there was some up in the trees then at the same time?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I definitely heard one in the tree.
That is interesting. Could you hear them moving from tree to tree, or?
Yeah.
You'd mentioned that you saw some on the ground moving along with you. Were they on 2 legs or on all 4s when they were trying to follow you back to the lodge?
When I looked back, it was switching from 2 legs to 4, and then I pedaled faster. I rented a mountain bike. It wasn't the best quality.
Mm-hmm.
In all honesty, the tire fell off when I got back to the bike shop.
Okay.
That's how terrified I was.
Why do you think it did you hit something while you were riding on the way back, or why do you think it fell off?
I wore out the bolts.
Can you explain what that means?
Held the tire.
Okay. So let's say for some of us who aren't into mountain biking, what would it take to wear out the bolts?
Biking really fast and not avoiding bumps.
Okay. So what I get from that is you were biking like your life depended on it, and you weren't caring what you were running into. You just needed to get back.
Yeah.
Wow. That's wild, dude.
I remember hearing years later, an encounter about something similar happening to someone in Arizona, but they were on a 4-wheeler. I was jealous.
When you got back to the, Blue Mountain, the lodge, you probably didn't talk to anyone about what just happened, or what happened directly after you got back to the lodge again?
As soon as I got into the hotel room, I passed out, and I remember waking up the next morning, and I went back up there to see if I could find any tracks.
Okay.
And they were gone.
Do you think you found the exact spot you were at, though?
Yeah, I did. I went from where I saw them, from where I started going. It was a good 5 miles into the mountain. I wasn't near the ski trails. I remember that. A skiing town
That's interesting. Why was it that you passed out when you got back to your room?
My body doesn't produce natural adrenaline, and there was so much adrenaline pumping from the encounter. I hit the floor as soon as I opened the door.
Think back to, let's say you're in the situation where you're trying to bike back to the lodge. Do you remember any of the thoughts that were in your mind when you were trying to get back to the lodge? You're biking, you're being followed.
I remember exactly how I felt. I kept repeating, "Oh my God, this is so cool. I'm being chased out of the forest by squatches."
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I got into this topic by finding Bigfoot.
So that's interesting. I was not expecting that. So for you, this is, on the one hand, it sounds like you might be scared, but on the other hand, you just told me this is one of the best days of your life.
It is. It was in a way I can't explain. And I got angry with myself. I don't know why. I think I got angry at myself because I didn't stay long enough to really take it in that I was being chased out of the forest. I ended up doing 5 years of mixed martial arts and training with one of the best jiu-jitsu schools in the world. So I've broken many punching bags from that anger.
If you could go back to that moment, it sounds like you would definitely go back to that moment.
I would, in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
See the other Squatches. I only saw one, but I heard the rest.
The sighting in Huntsville, Ontario, by Algonquin National Park. Is that a pretty remote area?
With the hotel?
Yeah, kind of like where your encounter took place.
It took place in a little path in between the main building and the cabin hotel room. The hotel is 10 minutes from downtown Huntsville.
Okay. A bit of a drive to get to the hotel from downtown. Is out in the woods at all, or?
Yes. It's surrounded by 2 golf courses.
Okay. Interesting. So you had a 12-foot male Sasquatch step out of the shadows. What look did you get of this creature compared to how you were able to get a look at the other creature in the first encounter?
Other one?
Yeah.
I counted. It was 2 minutes on the dot.
That you were just looking at it?
It was waiting. Yeah. Oh. It was waiting for me to make a move. Like, he knew what he was doing, but he knew he didn't know it was the wrong person to do it to, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Can you go into a little bit more what you exactly mean by that? Why you were the wrong person to do that to?
If I'm uncomfortable, I'm not moving. And the way he stared at me, I'll never forget that. He looked at me like he wanted me to see him, and I did. I didn't hear him come up. I didn't hear anything. I just remember saying in my head, "Oh my God, there's another Squatch. 2 for 2. That's the best way to explain it.
2 minutes is a pretty long time to be able to look at something. Were you able to really look at the features of the face at that time?
Yes. It had no neck like usual, and it had a Neanderthal head. Remember that. It was twice as big as the Squatch from Blue Mountain. That's the best way to explain his body.
Can you explain what you mean by he had a Neanderthal head?
A cone-shaped head. I couldn't remember the word when I said that.
Sagittal crest type thing?
Yes.
Yeah.
Like the cone head from the Nepal.
Exactly.
It looked exactly like that.
Okay. Yep. Very cool. During those 2 minutes, were you able to look at its eyes during that time?
Yes. He had very small pupils. His veins were pumping. I could see his veins too. And it looked like, when you're moving your hand and you're trying to crack a knuckle without using the other hand.
Yep.
He was doing that.
Like cracking his knuckles.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fair.
Or he could have been clapping rocks. I don't know. I just remember staring him in the eyes because I didn't want to be the first one to move because I know how predators work and I did not want to become prey. There's another memory I have about that weekend.
Okay.
On the way back home, we were going through Algonquin and there was a moose in the middle of the road, terrified. I don't know if that has any relation to the Sasquatch, but this was in the park.
I've seen a few moose before in northern New Hampshire a long time ago. What are the dead giveaways that a moose looks terrified?
It was shaking visibly. Me and my dad both looked at each other and we said, that moose does not look right, eh?
The interesting thing about the second encounter, you said it actually followed you back to the hotel.
Yeah. The hotel room was on the second floor. No, the main floor, sorry. And I remember the main floor being 12 feet tall because it had a little deck and then the entrance to the hotel room. And then once you open the door, there's a huge window facing the golf course and a little lake. From what
my notes, put down some notes. So are you saying that it was actually looking into the room through the window, looking at you? Is that right?
Yep.
So how did that interaction end?
My parents opened the door and it ducked down and disappeared.
Mm.
But I remember I looked at my phone and I set a timer I didn't take a picture because I knew I wouldn't get a shot of it, but I timed it because I can use my phone without looking at it. So I started the timer, and as I did that, I looked at it occasionally. It stared at me in the hotel room for 10 minutes, and then it left.
And you were saying that the Sasquatch University individuals, they've had sighting reports from around that same area as well?
Yes, just past the hotel.
Oh, wow.
Closer to the park.
Do you remember if their reports were similar to yours in any ways? Or
I think one was 8 to 9 foot tall, and the other was a juvenile. That's all I remember.
Is Algonquin National Park known for any other cryptid sightings as well, besides Sasquatch?
Skinwalkers.
Really?
Trying to think of what else. Maybe dogmen, I don't know. But definitely squatches.
When you say skinwalkers, can you describe, some people have different descriptions of what they're talking about when they say that. Can you describe what you are conveying when you say skinwalker?
Dire wolf.
Okay. So an extremely large prehistoric wolf type creature.
I think I might have seen one while driving through the park, but it was really far away, but it was huge.
That is very interesting. Man, I'll be honest, this is an area that I haven't had the privilege of talking to many people that have had sightings. I think I need to definitely track down the Sasquatch University guys and get them on the phone. How has this affected, you've had the 2 sightings, has this affected the rest of your life? Or how is life now after having these actual visual sightings?
Well, during the pandemic, I have no immune system, so it would have killed me.
Yeah.
I have a lot of health problems. I won't get into it unless someone asks what they are. I'll be talking for another 2 hours if I do.
Gotcha.
But I remember I got back into the loop of Bigfoot, and my mom opened the door to come check on me with my dog. She said, "Are you okay?" Because I was having a major panic attack. Have you seen that documentary of the? It's a 30-minute documentary on YouTube. It's of one of the Great Lakes. I forget which lake it is specifically, but it talks about the howling witch or something with a witch.
No, that sounds very interesting.
It does have Sasquatch in the name. I just can't remember the name of the documentary. But I was watching it and I'm like, Mom, I rewinded it. I'm like, Mom, listen to the screen. So she listened to it and she watched my reaction. She saw me curl up in a ball and hugging my dog frantically. How bad the scream affected me. But life has gotten a lot better since then. I'm finally working for once. I wasn't able to get a job because of my health and my disabilities ever since high school. I can tell you about it off camera, off the mic if you like.
Sure. Ever go back into the woods? Are you at a point where, I don't know, it sounds like you'd be okay going back into the woods though.
Yeah. If someone would love to invite me to an expedition, I'd love to go.
Sure.
Small Town Monsters, that's who I'm talking to about. I really enjoy their documentaries and they're very good at storytelling.
They're great people for sure. They really are. Like
when you had that other interview with one of the members about the place, I forget, it starts with an X.
Yep, Area X in Oklahoma. Mm-hmm.
When he started talking about how terrified he was in that tent when the tree fell, made me want to connect with him because that's the fear I felt when I was 13.
Would you ever want to see a Sasquatch again?
Of course. I'm not afraid of them. And I believe that they are a hybrid of us, like I said earlier.
Part ape, part human ancestor?
Yes.
Do you think we'll ever get to the point where it'll be proven to be a real creature by science, or what that might take?
It'll definitely take a long time before then, but no amount of money can change what I saw.
Sure. What would you say to people that are actively trying to go out and to have a visual encounter themselves? Do you have any advice for those people on how to prepare for that?
Definitely prepare mentally, because it will mentally drain you more than I can explain. And the best way to look for them is to not look. Go camping with a buddy and just have a good time in an active area with hotspots. That's what I would do, but I haven't had the opportunity to do that.
That's great advice. That's how pretty much we had stuff happen. Yeah, just act like humans that are camping and do enough stuff that it makes them curious. Yeah, that's exactly it, man.
Like I said, I've studied a lot. I don't have anything to do when I'm in the hospital, so I may as well learn.
Sure. Drew, this chat has been very interesting. It's definitely opened up a few ways of thinking that I'm going to look more into. Definitely going to look more into Ontario, your area up there, as this is very interesting. It's not an area that we've really gotten into yet on Bigfoot Society. So thank you for introducing me to that. But any other thoughts before?
I highly recommend you look into Northern Ontario. That's mostly where they've been sighted. Where I live right now, there was a sighting back in the 80s. Do you mind if I tell this little story from my grandma?
Oh, yes, because absolutely. Go right ahead.
Kind of really, my grandma, I'll say the name of the town. but I'll say part of the name so I don't give it out. It has harbor in the name. It's in the west end, the west side of Ottawa. And I live near Bay. Those are two different towns. My grandma is in Harbor walking through the forest in the middle of the night, and she does this for a few weeks. And there's a white-tailed fox following her until she gets home every single night. My theory is that he was protecting her from the Squatch that was in the area, because it was sighted not even 5 miles from where she was in 1984.
That is very interesting. Is that a normal thing to have? You said white-tailed fox?
Yeah. I've never had a white-tailed fox follow me.
No, I don't know.
And I've been in the forest all my life.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. That's very interesting. Are there any, you mentioned Sasquatch University, of course, anyone associated with that. Are there any other people that you can think of from that area of Canada that might be good to talk to as well?
I'd love to talk to the host of Mountain Beach Mysteries on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
I love his content. I'm sure you know him.
I know exactly.
I think his name's Dustin.
Yep. Chernopesky. Yeah.
If he was to invite me to go to be his cameraman for one of his documentaries, I'd be more than honored to go.
There you go, man.
That's
never
how
know.
Committed.
You never know.
I'm very committed to this topic, and it's a great community.
It really is.
And also, Jeremiah.
Yes.
You're doing a very good job.
Oh, thank you.
Don't give up.
Yeah, definitely not. A person said a few years ago, was like, are you sure you want to start focusing on Bigfoot? Aren't you going to run out of people to talk to? And at that time I was like, maybe. And now, Drew, there's no chance. I could talk forever, every night to someone. There are so many people that have had encounters. There's a lot. You would never run out of people to talk to once they know who you are and once they know how to contact you. It's wild, Drew. But yeah,
I'm honored to be on your show.
Thank you. It's my goal to be able to give people a way to share what they experienced in a non-judgmental, respectful environment where you don't have to be afraid of what people will say. And so I'm just glad that you reached out and we were able to chat today. Thank you so much for coming on, Drew.
If there's one thing I can say, if Cliff or Bobo from Finding Bigfoot or any of the people that I've mentioned are listening and want to reach out, my answer is yes to coming on an expedition.
That actually brings up a good question.
And
can people reach out to you in any way if they've experienced similar things in Ontario?
Absolutely. My Instagram or my Facebook is Drew Melbourne. It's a photo of me and my dog. And my Instagram is SKIBOO153.
Perfect.
It's pronounced Skidoo.
Drew, thank you so much for coming on. And I don't want to cut you off at all. Any last thoughts before we head out?
Keep on squatching.
Yeah, there you go, man. I love it. That's a great last thought. All right. Thank you so much for coming on, Drew.
No problem. It was my pleasure.
Just want to take a few minutes to say thank you to you, all my listeners, for listening to the podcast. Please take a minute to help out the show by subscribing on YouTube, making sure you hit the bell so you don't miss any notifications, and share the episode on YouTube with a friend. Also, if you're listening to us on a podcast, thank you so much. Make sure that you're subscribed, share the show with a friend. Really, it's all about sharing the show wherever you can. If you've had a Bigfoot encounter related to the following or know someone who has, please reach out to me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com or pass on my email. Here's a list. Bush pilots in Alaska that have seen something from their plane. Retired law enforcement officers whose department had a large file for Bigfoot encounters. Individuals that have had Bigfoot encounters on their family property through multiple years and generations. Individuals who've had a face-to-face encounter in the state of Tennessee, North Carolina, Kentucky, West Virginia, Alabama, or Mississippi. Individuals who've had a face-to-face encounter in the state of Oklahoma or Arkansas in the Ouachita National Forest. Individuals who've had a face-to-face encounter on Prince of Wales Island or surrounding area in southeast Alaska. Any encounter in Franklin County, Texas. Hunters that have never shared what they saw in the woods due to fear of ridicule. Individuals that have had a Bigfoot try to enter your house in the Honobbe, Oklahoma area. Any encounters that happened within a 20-mile radius of Northfield, Massachusetts and 25-mile radius of Great Barrington, Massachusetts. Encounters in the Enchanted Circle. Encounters in the Yosemite National Park area or any national park for that matter. Individuals that have lived a long life don't care what people think about them now and want to share what happened to them 50 to 60 years ago. I'm your guy to share your story. Individuals that live in remote wooded property and feel like they're under attack by Bigfoot after clearing their land. And lastly, any Bigfoot encounters where the individual saw what seemed to be an orangutan. Please reach out to me at bigfootsociety@gmail.com if any of those fit what you've experienced. And for those where it doesn't fit, please feel free to reach out anyways. A special thank you to all the Bigfoot Society Patreon and YouTube channel members. It's your support that helps keep the show going, and I extremely appreciate it. I'll see you back next time, listeners. New shows on Mondays and Fridays. I'll see you then.